Good afternoon. Good afternoon, friends and colleagues, and everybody who's joining us online. I am Adelina Santos Borja, the chair of the ILEC Scientific Committee, and I'll be moderating the first and second part of our international colloquium. And the third part will be moderated by Dr. Brian McIntosh of the Australian Rivers Institute and the International Water Center. To welcome all of us are two prominent and key personalities representing the two organizations co-hosting the 20th World Lake Conference. May I respectfully call in first Dr. Kazuhiko Takimoto, the president of the International Lake Environment Committee Foundation. Dr. Takimoto.
Thank you, Lenny, for your kind introduction. And I'm very pleased to welcome all the participants here for this international colloquium, which is very important gathering to discuss freely and also the dynamically. And we are going to make the contribution to the following the World Lake Conference. That is this is the third time, and I'm very happy to welcome you together with my colleague David Hamilton of Griffith University. Then the International Colloquium was firstly held in Japan, Tsukuba, the back-to-back with the World Lake Conference 17 in the 2018, and making the very good contribution to the following World Lake Conference 17. After that, in 2023 in Balaton Lake Shore of Hungary, we had another international colloquium to discuss the, again, relevant subject, including how we can make the World Lake Day be the inaugurated or established under the UN, the General Assembly. Then finally, we are very glad that the last December in New York, UN General Assembly, they made it. And then we are very happy to organize World Lake Conference after the inauguration of the establishment of World Lake Day. In this context, we have a lot of agenda items in this afternoon. Namely, we are going to discuss following the subject, namely pressing water challenges from both global and local perspective. Impact of climate change on lakes and water systems, knowledge and practices using the source to sea approach. Community engagement and traditional knowledge in water governance, and the linkage of global initiative with local actions in the context of sustainable lake management. I hope that our discussion here will be able to contribute to the development of the Brisbane Declaration as the outcome of World Lake Conference. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to conclude my short remarks by wishing you all fruitful discussions with your active participation in this afternoon. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and once again, I welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Takemoto. And may I call in next the indefatigable, I think he never gets tired, as the lead convener of the 20th World Lake Conference. May I call in Professor David Hamilton, the director of the Australian Rivers Institute.
Thank you, Dr. Santos Boya, Lenny. And I'd also like to thank Dr. Takimoto for his introduction. Well, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Global Dialogue on Lakes, Rivers and Communities and how they can reflect on Brisbane's waterscapes in a changing world as part of the 20th World Lake Conference. But my first responsibility is actually to provide an acknowledgement of country. And that acknowledgement is a little bit different to a welcome to country that would have been given by a local Indigenous person. But this acknowledgement of country is important. And here we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting today. Locally, it's the Turrbal and Yagara people, and pay our respects to their elders past and present, and extend that to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. So this acknowledgement is not a formality. It's actually a reflection and an acknowledgement of the deep and enduring connection that the First Peoples have with land and water and sky for tens of thousands of years. Indigenous communities have cared for and understood these ecosystems in ways that continue to inform our water management and stewardship of aquatic systems today. And by acknowledging country, we honour this knowledge and reflect on a time to listen, learn, and walk together toward a more inclusive and resilient future. So today's colloquium is a bridge between the global perspectives and the local implementation. It's going to set a stage for the main conference program beginning tomorrow. And by exploring how climate change, water governance, community engagement can intersect across different scales, we'll look at how we can transition from examining the world's Great Lakes through to the Brisbane River Basin and some of our local lakes. This afternoon, we're going to be hearing from international experts on climate resilience, disaster risk reduction, and transboundary water cooperation. Local voices, including Brisbane-based scientists and community leaders, will share insights in water security and lake and reservoir management. And to our First Peoples representative, who will speak on some of the traditional knowledge that is continuing and will increasingly shape our water future. So through this panel discussion this afternoon, we will bring about a dialogue and a citizen reflection, exploring how we can link global and local water challenges in a source-to-sea approach. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'll pass back to Lenny. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And our first keynote speaker is a distinguished scholar from the Disaster Prevention Research Institute at Kyoto University in Japan. Professor Tanaka has dedicated his career to advancing our understanding of hydrology, water resources, and the impacts of climate change on regional and global water cycles. He has a background in civil and environmental engineering and has developed innovative model technologies that integrate urban areas, vegetation, croplands, and water bodies. His work couples these models with meteorological systems, enabling comprehensive analysis of energy and water cycles across multiple scales. Professor Tanaka's research has significantly contributed to the assessment of climate change impacts on hydrological systems and water resources management. He is an active member of several professional societies, including the Japan Society of Hydrology and Water Resources, the American Geophysical Union, and the International Association of Hydrological Sciences. We are honored to have Professor Tanaka with us at the World Lake Conference, and particularly in this international colloquium, where his insights into regional water environments and disaster prevention will be shared to all of us. Professor Tanaka, please.
Thank you very much for such a kind introduction. So today I would like to introduce our study related to global climate change impact study. Firstly, I would like to briefly introduce our tool or model. So we are working on land surface model. This calculates energy and water balance, both, not only water, but also energy balance is calculated. So input to energy balance is from radiation balance. So we calculate 3 balance equation at the same time. And one of the land surface model we are developing in Kyoto University, especially I'm in the field of civil engineering, so I'm very interested in basin development or land use development. So I did develop such a model, including not only the natural vegetation part, but also including the urban canopy and the water area to discuss the impact of development, basin development ですね。And also, water use is very important for the water management. So in this model, we can calculate the irrigation water requirement in the model in a physical way based on the soil moisture status. And this is some schematic image what land first model is doing. So in the panel, please look at the left column. So initially they have the water, each layer have 10 millimeter, 100 millimeter, 70 millimeter. In the first time step, the top layer received 10 millimeter and drop 5 millimeter. So then, as a result, the next time step, あ、そうか、これで作るんだろう。あ、カーソル、ちょっと、very difficult for this、ちょっと難しいな。15ね。Next step, 15. If we look at the next time, so no rainfall, so just loose evaporation and drainage. So this kind of water balance calculation is conducted every day, every hour in the model. Okay. So I want to show some example of the model. So this is first example is application to Yodo River Basin in Japan. So we have a very big lake. Lake viewer. So this is some water balance check for some dam catchment. So some dam is very too small. So in such case, it's very difficult to give the good rainfall data. So not so good accuracy. But if we look at the bigger dam like Hiyoshi Dam and Takayama Dam, we have many rain gauge in the upstream. So then water balance calculation is very correct. So once we can prepare good rainfall data, this model can provide a good runoff. So this is some kind of validation and how the rainfall is important for such simulation. Anyway, so this kind of distributed model can provide many information related to many water balance component, energy balance component, and also surface state variable like soil moisture, snow water, and so on in this way. For example, in the Shiga prefecture, we have relatively much mountain area. We have like this. And we have many rice fields, so water is supplied. So and this is water is used here. So this is forest area is water source area. This is water consumption area. So in this way, we can show where the water is used in this way. Another example is application to the RRC basin in the Central Asia. In this application, we try to reproduce the historical change as correct as possible. So we collect many information how the basin was developed for the many irrigation farmland was developed in the last 50 years. So we collected many information and give the every year's land use data into this simulation. And finally, as a result of water input from river and evaporation from the RRC and the precipitation over RRC, we calculate the water balance of the RRC. Then we can update how the RRC is increase or decrease. So this is a given prepared historical change of irrigated area. So gradually irrigated area was developed like this in the last 50 years. Then every year we could simulate the evapotranspiration like this. If you look at this RRC, so every year it is shrinking as a result of negative water balance. So RRC should shrink. Okay. Input river flow is gradually decrease. So then RRC cannot survive. Now decreasing. And in this way, we could simulate the historical change. And also, this is this distributed model, and we calculate every component, so we can quantify how much water was used for each purpose. So some is for just water loss, some is for supplying the Sarigamish Lake and so on. Such kind of component can be clarified by such model. And okay, now I move on to the future climate impact. So I used the first climate data from EasyMIP 3B project. In this simulation, they provide 5 GCM and 3 RCP scenario for each. So combination of 15 future simulation is possible by this data set. So like this, we can simulate the 15 future world of the future status with the 15 combination. Okay, so this is the precipitation change compared with the current and end of this century. Each model show different scenario. So model each GCM forecast different precipitation change like this. And also as a result, evaporation also change like this. And water resource also change. So we cannot say which is correct. So we should utilize as many as possible. So that's why we are doing such kind of ensemble simulation. And for this conference, I'm coming here. So this is a lake conference. So I asked Nakamura Sensei to provide the transboundary lake watershed data. So I analyze the result for each lake watershed areas. Okay. I show some, no time to show all the results. So just I select some result. First result is for Nasser Lake for the, mostly this is for Nile River. This is a future change of precipitation, evaporation, runoff, snow is almost not originally almost zero, and irrigation water and soil moisture and temperature. So according to this simulation, so future they will receive more precipitation. Nile River will receive more precipitation, and future they will have more wet condition, and maybe this is good for Nile River base, I think. Another example is Chad, Lake Chad. Lake Chad also will receive more rain than current, so they will have more available water in the future. Now Chad is also shrinking, so but this future precipitation increase scenario is welcome for Chad Lake. This is for Tanganyika Lake. Tanganyika is not so big change in precipitation, but evaporation will increase, so maybe water resource will be a little bit short. And this is for RRC. Precipitation, they will receive a little bit more precipitation, but evaporation is much big increase. So as a result, base average soil moisture will decrease in this simulation. It means so they will need more water for agriculture, I think. Okay, anyway, so with such model, we can do some scenario analysis. What will happen, or what could happen if we choose this option? This is some example for RRC. So if we can decide which is important. So if we choose more crop production, such kind of land use will be best. Then what happens? For if we increase more livestock, then we will land will be used like this. Then if we use land and water like this, the base water balance will change like this. So we can show such kind of scenario, future scenario by such kind of physical model. So this is one important advantage of developing such a physically based model. So this is summary for this today's talk. I just introduced the land surface model, and for the future simulation, I utilize EasyMIP3B data for the future simulation. And now I got many output or result for almost all transboundary lake watershed. So if you have interest, please contact me. I can show what will happen for your target watershed. And one final message is, so physically based land surface model can be a strong tool for scenario analysis with visual representation of the consequences of land development, water use change of the catchment hydrological scale cycle. Such information provides a scientific basis for watershed management and climate change. So this is all of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Kenji Tanaka. And one thing I appreciate by models and the result is it's very visual. So if we explain it to the mayors or to the legislators in their language and with those visuals, I think it could make an impact in their decision making. So again, thank you, Professor Tanaka, for clearly demonstrating that physically based model can be a good basis for decision making for future watershed management under climate change. Thank you so much. Our next keynote speaker is a leading expert in water governance and climate resilience and is based at the International Water Center in Australia. She is Associate Professor Regina Suter with a background in environmental science and community-based water management. She has worked extensively across the Asia-Pacific region. I think that's where most of us are in, focusing on innovative approaches to rural water governance and climate adaptation. Her work emphasizes the importance of integrating cultural strengths into water planning particularly in Pacific Island communities, and she has collaborated with a wide range of partners, including the Asia Pacific Water Forum, Water for Women, and the Australian Water Partnership. Dr. Suter is also known for her leadership in promoting inclusive decision-making in the water sector, advocating for diverse voices and equitable access to water resources. In this World Lake Conference, Dr. Suter brings a wealth of experience in catchment scale thinking and sustainable water management. Her insights will be invaluable as we explore the role of lakes as sentinels for integrated river basin management and seek pathways toward resilient and inclusive water futures. Dr. Regina, the floor is yours.
For that very kind introduction, and thank you to the organisers for the invitation to speak here about a topic that I'm very passionate about, and that is water security in our region, what the status of that is, what some of the challenges are, and opportunities for progressing some of the water security challenges we're facing. I just want to start first, is it this one? No. Thank you. With a very brief definition of water security, and in the literature there are many different definitions listed, mostly depending upon the disciplinary perspective that's being taken. A widely accepted and useful definition is that of Gray and Sadoff from 2007, which recognises that water is both a source of production and health, growth and cooperation, but it's also a source of destruction, of poverty and dispute. Gray and Sadoff define water security then as the availability of an acceptable quantity and quality of water for health, livelihoods, ecosystems and production, but coupled with an acceptable level of water-related risks to people, environments and economies. So it's important to acknowledge that water security has many dimensions. There are different needs from sustainable water systems, spanning from human and economic needs and environmental needs. And achieving all of those needs requires multidisciplinary and multi-sectoral thinking and working. More recent discourse around water security has really sought to integrate and highlight more of the social aspects, to emphasise that water security extends well beyond the provision of infrastructure for water supplies, and that social aspects can significantly influence the water security experienced by different people. We also see much alignment between water security and aspects of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is not surprising given the Sustainable Development Goals are a framework of the key determinants that influence sustainable development as a basis to overcome poverty. And we all know that water is critical to that goal. So we see water security-like targets featuring in several of the SDGs, including the most obvious, SDG 6, Clean Water and Sanitation for All, SDG 14, Life Underwater, SDG 11, which includes resilience of settlements to disasters, and SDG 13, Climate Action. So just like we see with governance and management of water security being dispersed amongst many ministries, it's also spread across many SDGs. So this alignment of water securities and inclusion in the Sustainable Development Goals is an indicator to us already that water security is a problem that needs greater attention. But to further understand the status of water security, we need to be able to monitor it in a way that gives us a more complete picture of the situation. And now there's several frameworks that can be used to assess water security, and they're designed to suit particular purposes. One that has been designed for the Asia-Pacific region is the Asian Water Development Outlook, which was developed by the Asian Development Bank, the ADB, with many partners including here in Australia, my own centre, the International Water Centre, and our home, the Australian Rivers Institute at Griffith University, as well as the University of Queensland. ADO, as it's commonly referred to, provides a pretty useful framework and methodology for national level assessments of water security, and it's been applied to 49 of the ADB's member countries. Its greatest value is not so much in comparing countries, but in identifying trends in a nation's water security over time. So given that it's been conducted since every few years since 2013, this is a feature that we value. The most recent published ADO is from 2020. However, our institutions and the many other partners are currently finalising ADO 2025, and we're looking forward to launching that in December this year. The definition of water security adopted in ADO it's there on the screen, and you'll see it's well aligned with that conceptual definition that I shared previously. So in order to really assess the status and progress of water security, ADB and the partners developed a framework representing 5 key dimensions. And that's used with specific indicators for each of those dimensions that collectively represent different dimensions of water security. So the first dimension is rural water security, and that's really focused on access to and impacts from water supply and sanitation for rural populations. The second key dimension of economic water security represents the sufficiency of water for agriculture, industry, energy, and the broader economic activity. Urban water security, the third key dimension, is indicated by access and affordability to domestic water supply and sanitation, as well as the adequacy of drainage to mitigate floods and environmental water security. This is the fourth dimension of its own, environmental water security, which measures both the status of catchments and water systems health, as well as some of the pressures on those systems, such as the governance of water pollution and wastewater. The fifth dimension represents water security-related disasters, in particular, the exposure, vulnerability, and resilience to those disasters. So assessing those 5 dimensions of water security gives both country governments as well as development partners a greater insight to which aspects of water security are under pressure and perhaps warrant greater attention than others, particularly when we see those trends persisting over time. It does also help to give a picture of common water security issues across a region, and I'm going to share some of those insights here. So what we see here is a very, very high-level summary of the results of the 2020 ADO assessment, really showing a single national water security index score out of 5, which represents essentially the level of maturity or development of national water security for each country. So we can immediately see there is some diversity of scores, although there is only one country that is considered to be nascent, and that's Afghanistan, and no country has achieved a score of 5 or that model level of water security. It's very difficult to achieve full water security, and one of the reasons for this is that there are trade-offs between some of these dimensions, particularly as they're being developed. So achieving, say, excellent economic water security may come with some costs to, for example, rural or urban water security. Looking at the sub-regional clusters of countries, we see some interesting and helpful trends. Across Central and West Asia, we see that most countries have a mid-level of national water security, with rural and economic water security being difficult to achieve in many countries, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Tajikistan in particular. In South Asia, the results were strongly influenced by the relatively low performance on rural and urban water security. Progress in those dimensions was made during that 2013 to 2020 period, but it wasn't enough to bring that region up to the same level as East Asia and Southeast Asia. Environmental water security is generally fairly weak across South Asia, although they are comparatively strong on water-related disaster security. Across Southeast Asia, there's been steady progress since 2013. However, the maturity of water security remains really at the lower end of the scale. Interestingly, there are quite diverse strengths and weaknesses across these countries. Some are stronger on economic water security, while others are stronger on, say, rural water security. And that really indicates an excellent opportunity for South-South learning by building on locally successful approaches to strengthening water security. East Asia has shown strong growth in water security since 2013, with their economic water security in most of those countries now at the level pretty much seen in what are termed the advanced economies. And both urban and disaster water security are generally strong also. However, rural and environmental water security still lag and require additional attention. Across the Pacific region, national water security was around the lower and mid levels of maturity. And I want to come back to the Pacific in a moment. But in brief, this is really a consequence of them being small island developing states in a highly exposed disaster area. Interestingly, as for Southeast Asia, and perhaps with even more diversity, we see different relative strengths amongst those different Pacific Island countries, reinforcing the potential for cross-country cooperation and learning and capacity development across that region. What are termed the advanced economies have sufficient economic and human resources to be successfully adapting to water stresses, though still there are a few opportunities to further strengthen and develop their water security, particularly relating to environmental and economic water security. So, having given you a very rapid overview of the status of water security across our region, I just wanted to touch briefly on a few of the challenges to progressing water security. What's probably very well known to everyone here is that we are experiencing water stress, and increasingly so. So in a broad sense, by water stress, we mean that water use is approaching the maximum supply of renewable water resources. A 2023 analysis by the Aqueduct Program of the World Resources Institute indicated that at least half of the global population, that's 4 billion people, live under highly water-stressed conditions for at least 1 month of the year. And 25 countries, or around 25% of the global population, face extremely high water stress each year, regularly using up most of their available water supply. Furthermore, by 2050, there'll be an additional 1 billion people expected to live with extremely high water stress. And many of these water-stressed countries are located in our Asia and Pacific region. Although I note the Pacific Islands are not visible on this map, and that is actually one of the challenges for the Pacific, being overlooked for its relatively smaller populations. So this change to water resources supply and demand is one of the key drivers of change to water security. So climate change is, of course, adding to water stress by affecting water resources in our region, and we're highly exposed to climate-related disasters, and we have many vulnerable populations with limited capacities to adapt. So you'll all be well familiar with the types of climate hazards affecting water resources and probably many of the ways in which water resources are being impacted. Those include a scarcity or change of rain and surface waters, reduced recharge of groundwater, melting glaciers, increased evaporation, saltwater intrusion to groundwater aquifers, and increased or changed runoff carrying contaminants. So changing the way we manage, distribute, use and reuse these changing water resources is really fundamental to climate adaptation. But there are some aspects about the interaction between climate and water we are still understanding, and in particular how these might manifest locally. I'm going to refer to some research here by David Hamilton and some of his colleagues looking more closely at the interactions between climate, water quality and water quantity. And they're looking at this in the major water supply reservoirs here in Queensland, in southeast Queensland. So there are some impacts of climate on water quality and quantity that we might more easily predict. Floods cause erosion and sediment enters water systems, droughts change water flows and flushing of contaminants, but there are more complex and dynamic interactions at play. We see that patterns of flood and droughts change the loading of sediments, nutrients and pathogens into reservoirs and to rivers. We also see climate change affecting hydrological characteristics within those water systems. So we see them affecting water temperatures, stratification and mixing. And we see that climate change also impacts on the catchments, affecting particularly vegetation and, for example, bushfires, which also influences water quality. So understanding such local interactions will be important for water resource managers in minimising water stress and managing water security. Beyond climate impacts on water resources themselves, we also see significant impacts of climate change on other parts of our water-linked systems, which affect broader water security and the resilience of people and social systems. Climate hazards that damage water supply, irrigation, sanitation and flood infrastructure are proving to be a really significant impediment to progressing sustainable development in many countries. Damage to other infrastructure, services and systems caused by water-related disasters, whether it's temporary or permanent, causes major interruptions to people's lives, livelihoods and economic activity. We know already that strong water security, including good wash, is critical to human health and well-being and to social inclusion. And that, of course, people need to be healthy and well if they are going to be able to cope and adapt to climate change. But we're really only starting to delve more deeply into that lower pathway, the other ways that water security contributes to social resilience. And our team at IWC has been exploring this in a small way in the urban, informal, or squatter settlements in some Pacific Island countries, where we're using a social resilience framework to link water security and wash to those building blocks that are required for people to be able to cope, adapt and transform to climate change. And this leads me to a second significant challenge to water security, and that is addressing social exclusion and inequalities. Everyone's experience with water insecurity is different, because people are diverse. Even within a family, individual needs and experiences are different. There are many dimensions or determinants that influence people's water security. 3 of those that are most recognised are whether people live in a rural or peri-urban area, their gender and their wealth. Significant inequalities in water security do exist between rural and urban, and I would suggest peri-urban, although we don't measure that very well, populations. And that's really largely a consequence of the tyrannies of distance for those rural populations, as well as some of the political dimensions that are at play. The intersection of gender and water security is really deep and complex, especially for women and people identifying as gender diverse. And wealth is also a very strong determinant of water security, particularly in terms of the affordability of services and infrastructure for water supply, sanitation or irrigation. So those determinants have become entrenched because of the cyclical nature between water insecurity and water inequality. We see that water insecurity that some people experienced through reduced access, ineffective infrastructure, higher financial costs, higher opportunity costs, it further reduces their adaptive capacities of those marginalised people, and they feel those impacts from water stress more strongly. It costs them more to cope and adapt, locking them into this cycle of insecurity. So this cyclical relationship reinforces the critical importance of striving for water security for everyone, not only those that are easiest to reach. I was going to share some perspectives on the Pacific Islands. I think I will skip on the challenges, but I will share some of the opportunities for that region. The Pacific Island is unique in many ways. It has unique challenges, but it also has unique opportunities. There is really strong regional level cooperation, which presents significant opportunities to address some capacity challenges by cooperating across countries. Generally, there's less disconnect between wash and water resources in Pacific Island countries, which is very helpful from a systems perspective. The resilience and the disaster agendas are really well developed, and they're committed to at a high political level, and they are becoming increasingly connected with water. And they have relatively intact catchments and strong social capital. And these are aspects that we are working with in some of our research with the governments in the Pacific Island countries to strengthen water security outcomes. There are many other challenges to water security. I won't go into all of these in any great detail, just to acknowledge that there are many challenges. There are challenges with data. Urbanisation and population growth are both creating significant water demands and changes to water quality. We're extracting a lot of water. We're impacting water quality. Governance is often weak and fragmented, particularly difficult where there are transboundary challenges. And financing, even though it's last on the list, this is one of the most critical challenges for the water sector. We shifted towards a fully user pays model, essentially thinking about water security as a commodity, and that isn't going to get us to water security for everyone. Lastly, some opportunities. One thing we've seen in the most recent ADO, more clearly in the most recent ADO assessment, is that although it's helpful to have a high economic productivity or gross national income, it's not essential to be able to achieve national level water security. So there are significant learning opportunities there for countries that have a modest gross national income but are achieving high levels of national water security. Climate investment is an opportunity. Water investments are lagging far behind than other sectors, despite the criticality of water in the impacts of climate change. So there are many potential opportunities sitting there, and a lot of those are no regrets investments. They're going to deliver benefits regardless of what the climate change scenario looks like. We also can see potential contributions from the water and wash space to climate mitigation, and that will increase eligibility around financing as well. Integrated water management, it's really a necessary step to water security. There are two aspects I wanted to highlight here that are opportunities. The water cycle is a system, and if we're taking a systems perspective, we understand the hydrological cycle connects many landscapes and many sectors, and we need to recognise that a bit more strongly in our management. IWM reminds us also that good governance is really critical, especially if we want to address that cycle of water insecurity and water inequalities. Thank you. Thanks, Lenny.
Thank you so much, Professor Suter. I think one of the key points I got is you have water security if you have manageable. The keyword is manageable water stress, because every day we encounter water stress. And as long as it's manageable, we can have that sense of security. Now we move in to the second part of our international colloquium, which is the panel discussion. And we have 5 panelists with us. And one, Ms. Ingeret Nowati, will be presenting online from Bali. So this second part will focus on the theme from source to sea, linking global and local water challenges. So I think it's better for the panelists so that they will better appreciate the presentation to be at the audience. So you look at the presentations, and as I call them, then they go to the podium for their presentation. Our first panelist is Mr. Alejandro Juarez Aguilar, the Executive Director of the Institute Corazon de la Tierra. And he is also a member of the ILEC Scientific Committee. So Alejandro, please.
Thank you. Check. Okay. So nice to be here. So we're short on time. I will try to go direct to the point. This presentation is source to sea approach, linking lakes, rivers, and coast in the case of the Lerma-Chapala-Santiago Basin in Mexico. The Lerma-Chapala-Santiago is a major hydrological basin. It includes the Lerma River, the Lake Chapala, and the Santiago River. The Lake Chapala is basically in the middle. It covers a little bit more of 130,000 square kilometers and covers part of 9 Mexican states. This basin, particularly in the first part, the Lerma River, is strongly economically involved and is producing 18% of the gross annual product of the country. But in terms of administrative management, is divided, is not managed as a whole, as a unit, but as 2 separate basins with different government institutions involved and also with separate governance councils. The first one, which is in red, here, this part, this is the Lerma-Chapala. And it's in red because basically there is a water scarcity. There is a ban of renewing water uses for different kind of stakeholders. Sorry, and the green one is because there is still availability. This is the part which goes back basically to Pacific Ocean. And in the case of the source-to-sea approach, basically it's directed to three parts about connecting river basin and coastal ocean governance, to integrate management of pollution, water flow, biodiversity, sediment, and livelihoods, and engaging stakeholders across sectors and geographies. The flow types that are identified in this approach is these five: water, pollution, sediment, biota, and materials. And the challenges for this particular basin, in the case of water, is over-extraction, groundwater depletion, reduced flows to lakes in the Lerma Chapala sector. In the case of pollution, there are high loads of industrial and agricultural waste, and regrettably, we still have untreated sewage in several parts of rivers and the lake itself. About sediments, erosion and sedimentation in lakes, it could be huge. In the case of Lake Chapala, it goes from 100 to 400,000 tons per year. And in the case of biota, there is collapse of native endemic fish species. And in the case of materials, there are plastics, heavy metals, and agrochemicals transported downstream up to the coast. There are several critical zones. A first one, of course, they are the lakes and reservoirs of the Lerma Chapala Basin, which includes the first, second, and third largest Mexican lakes, which are Chapala Lake, Cuitzeo, and Pátzcuaro. But also it includes the Yuriria Lake, which is a very old reservoir that was created in 1548. So basically, here, this is Chapala, Cuitzeo, Pátzcuaro, and this is Yuriria. Other critical zones are allocated basically in the city of Guadalajara. I almost forgot to mention, but the Lerma Chapala Santiago Basin, its water is used by the two largest cities in Mexico, which will be Mexico City and Guadalajara City. Guadalajara City is within the basin, but the Mexico City is not. It's basically taking water and using it and not returning because the wastewater goes to another basin. In this case, Guadalajara City is around this part, and this is the coastal area. In this part, in the case of the Guadalajara City, we have city and industrial wastewater before and after Guadalajara itself. And in the case of this part with the Santiago, we have big reservoirs, which includes El Cajón, La Yesca, y Aguamilpa. And also we have this coastal management, which is generated here in the area. Okay. As I was mentioning, the Lerma Chapala and the Santiago basins are managed separately. In the case of the Lerma Chapala basin, it's relevant to mention that there are much more policies and programs applied because of the water scarcity there is, and also because of the different numbers of uses that are in the area. There are uses for industrial, agricultural, livestock, and also for water consumption. So it was necessary, because there is not enough water for everybody, to create several tools to manage this part. In 1991, it was created a distribution agreement, which had to be changed later. And in 1993, there was a basin council which was created. And in a way, this basin council has been the most effective and most strong in Mexico. But it's interesting to mention also that this sole case, because the model, how it is structured and is working, hasn't been completely reproduced in the other basin councils in Mexico. In 2004, there was defined a water allocation agreement, and in 2014, a water ban decree was generated basically directly for the presidency of the Republic. Taking all this into account, the Lake Chapala avoid a lot of crises. Here, this yellow line, it was the volume of Lake Chapala in 2002. It was reduced to only 14% of the total volume. So basically, it was possible to go walking at the bottom of the lake. And that created a lot of conflict and a lot of political conflicts. But after the creation of the agreements and the creation also the ban, we have a kind of a sustainable volume, which only was put into test until past year when it was reduced also to only 30% of the total volume. There are several laws, regulations, and programs at the national level. Very basically, I will mention the National Water Law, the National Water Program, which is renewed each 6 years. The Mexican normative about water discharge in natural water bodies. It was reformed 2 years ago to go more strict about discharge standards as BOD, nitrogen, heavy metals, and some other aspects. PROSAPIS and PROAGUA are programs directed basically about sanitation. And also there is a national program about a payment of ecosystem services. But taking into account these national regulations, there are also some difference that is important to mention. As you can see here, there are many more instruments for the case is particularly of the Lerma River. But in the case of Lake Chapala, there is only one regulation about the lake being declared as Ramsar site in 2009. And 1 year later, it was possible to have a management plan. For the case of the Santiago River, we have also a basin council and a sanitation plan. But in the case of Guadalajara City, it's generating a high amount of wastewater, and it's only 75% of that water is being currently treated. But it's important to mention that this is not including the industrial pollution, and that's a huge problem because basically this wastewater treatment has been provided by the state government, and the federal government has been absent in many ways until the past year. So that's why the remediation of toxic hotspots, it's only done currently to a pilot processes. And we have here this situation here. So despite all these regulations, we have a fragmented enforcement and we have over extraction. It's important to mention, because we are talking about the source to sea approach, that the groundwater and the superficial water are managed they are managed in a different and separate way. They are not taken into account as a whole thing. And that's the reason why we have a depletion or depletion of the groundwater from 10 years deep, 40 years ago, to now it's necessary to make wells to up to 80 to 90 meters deep. The Ramsar site management plan hasn't been applied completely. We have a problem with encroachment, eutrophication. We have cyanobacteria present since 2 years ago. So 2 years ago in a situation that is now basically of public knowledge, and we have a strong biodiversity loss. From 28 native species, in the case of the Lerma Chapala Basin, it is not possible to find 15 of them, not reported in the catchment reports. In the case of the Santiago, the problem about the wastewater, there is also complemented with water losses in the urban distribution, which goes from 30 to 40%. And in the case of coast and the Pacific Ocean, we have a Ramsar site, which is called Marismas Nacionales, and there have been some efforts about mangrove restoration and about plastic pollution monitoring. But in the coastal area, we could say that is the weaker about regulation and about implementation. We have had some ecosystem recovery in the estuaries, but the downstream pollution is still elevated. So about the governance integration, it would be important to introduce a basin-wide governance framework within this source to sea logic, a possible strengthening or restructuring the Lerma Chapala Basin and the Santiago River Councils. Some interventions which go very much with the problem that I was mentioning before. In the case of the upstream Lerma, we need to apply a water-efficient irrigation, pollution treatment of industrial and agricultural waste in the state of Mexico. In the case of Lake Chapala, it's important to apply wetland restorations, sediment control, and also control of eutrophication and urban sprawl. In the case of the Santiago River, we have industrial wastewater, both in Guadalajara and in the Needham Park, which is El Salto. We need urban runoff control and some other aspects. And about coastal zone, there is a need of improve the mangrove restoration, coastal fishery sustainability, and also to the marine plastic capture efforts. Okay. It's important to mention that successful S2S must understand the special lake features because we have a lot of waters, a lot of lakes, natural ones, but also reservoirs. And in the case of the Santiago River, many of these reservoirs are used for electric generation. This is a challenge because the sole example of the two councils being separated and not working in a coordinated way show how difficult has been so far to the three levels of government, municipalities, the state governments, and the national government to coordinate in an organized way to improve the management of this area. And it's important also to mention that this number of policies and instruments in the Lerma Chapala compared with the Santiago, it's very much related with the level of conflicts that have arisen previously. In this matter, Guadalajara City, as main user of water of the lake, has become a strong ally, even if forced by need. And but unfortunately, the Santiago River hasn't had a powerful ally as the case of the upper part in the Lerma Chapala. So we have the need from moving from this kind of ladder, to say so, moving from an organized simplicity and basically moving also to this organized complexity. We need to organize this complexity, and at last, with a lot of luck and a lot of effort, we could have a functional complexity. This is important to mention that integrated lake basin management is important to apply because even if this includes the underground water, includes rivers, includes lakes, and includes the coastal zone, each one of these parts taken into each one of these parts is part of a whole, of course, but it's also different. The lakes have specific features and that need to be taken into account in order to provide an adequate management. This is a figure that shows basically how an ILBM process could be encompassed. And this is basically a cyclic process. It's important to go to acknowledge the state of the lake basin, to identify issues, needs, and challenges, to seek ways to strengthen the governance pillars, and finally, with continued effort, eventually to reach the long-term goal. But this is not linear. This is in a simple line like this. It's important to go back and to understand that the stakeholders change, and they have a very, very strong paper to play in this process. And in a nutshell, that's it. Thank you very much.
Alejandro, and I think some of the things that he presented are still to be implemented, and some are still for implementation, but we'll go on that during the panel discussion. Our second panelist, unfortunately, she cannot join us, but she will give her presentation online. And she is Dr. Ms. Inge Retnowati, the Director of the Biodiversity Conservation of the Ministry of Environment in Indonesia. She will give her presentation from the beautiful island of Bali.
Thank you. Can you hear my voice? Is it clear? Can you hear my voice? Thank you, thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, all delegates or panelists at this international colloquium. First, I would like to thank you for inviting Indonesia to this important session. Now, allow me to share something from Indonesia in the scale of global level and also for our national effort on sustainable lake management. I try to share screen. Yeah. My presentation title is Paving the Way for Advancing Global Concern and Action on Sustainable Lake Management and its relevance to the global biodiversity framework. I try to start from what we already have. What ILEC already do many things for our effort together. This is the ILEC that already presented since the first World Lake Conference. We do have some guidelines, and we also arrange. We also have some World Lake conferences and many many information for how for guiding how to manage the lakes. We already have prepared by ILEC and of course maybe also some other experts and maybe also other research institutions and universities. ILEC and other parties also has World Lake Vision. I forget it is launched at the which World Lake Conference, but it is very great that we already have 7 principles for manage the lakes. I think it is a good, it is a very good framework or guideline for us to manage the lake based on these 7 principles. The 7 principles and all declaration, all guideline, all effort for managing the lakes, and including the concept or the approach of integrated lake basin management, then is supported by some global agreements or resolution. As we do aware, perhaps some of you, we already have a resolution on sustainable lake management at the UNIA 5. And we also promote implementation of the resolution in the meeting of UN Water Conference in New York. And at the previous World Water Forum in Bali, we promote the World Lake Day. It was attended by representative from UNEP, from Ramsar Secretariat, and from ILEC, of course, and also from IFAD. And then we take the idea or initiative for the World Lake Day to the high-level week in New York. Thank you for Dr. Hiroki, Professor Hiroki, that already lead us to have this event at the time. And then finally, we have adopted the resolution on World Lake Day 2024. This is the UNIA resolution on sustainable lake management that encourage all state members, all countries, and also encourage request UNEP to do some global effort in this context. And this is the resolution on the World Lake Day to design it 27 August as which is the first day of our World Lake Conference as the World Lake Day, and invites all state members to commemorate the day, and also invites UNEP to facilitate the observance of World Lake Day, and request Secretary General to bring the present resolution to the attention of all state members of the United Nations. How is it relevant to the Convention on Biological Diversity? Lakes, rivers, and wetlands account for less than 1% of the Earth's surface, but but uh, uh, but it is very important for all living species. And this ecosystem provides essential services to billions of people. There are also billions more who are living without safely managed drinking water, people who would benefit from a recovery of freshwater ecosystems and from proper water management, including sustainable lake management. And yet, freshwater lakes face an existential crisis. 50% of the world's largest freshwater lakes are in decline and will face continued pressure as a result of human activity. Lakes and other freshwater ecosystems are facing a number of threats from pollutants such as fertilizers, pesticides, and plastics, invasive species, eutrophication, and other. Protecting the biodiversity of our lakes and freshwater ecosystem is of
Inge. Inge, can you hear us? Inge, can you hear us?
Can someone please check? Oh. Okay, I'll just get in touch with Inget maybe through WhatsApp and check, and maybe she can come again. So in the interest of time, since Ms. Inge is out of connection, may I call in our second panelist? The special, he's a specialist at JICA, particularly a senior advisor on biodiversity and ecosystem conservation. May I call in now Dr. Motohiro Hasegawa of the Japan International Cooperation Agency.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moderator. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for giving me this opportunity. It's very nice to be back here in Brisbane, 30-some years after I did my master's at Queensland Uni. I used to study koala bears here, but I get to talk to river basin management today. I've been working for Japan International Cooperation Agency for like 20-some years, and I am in charge of international assistance related to biodiversity and ecosystem conservation. And today, my topic is integrated river basin management. And integrated means we do both bilateral and multilateral cooperation. And I have 10 to 15 minutes to talk about both approaches, which is very challenging, but I see how it goes. And okay, this is a summary of my presentation. And left-hand side, I summarized a bilateral approach, Japan to one single country. And right-hand side, I summarized a multilateral approach, Japan to more than one country, several countries. And first of all, I would like to talk about the boundaries. Boundaries means we have physical boundaries and also functional boundaries, and both are very important. And for country to country, we have boundaries within a single country. Basically, it is more complex, but it is basically local issues and national issues. But for a multilateral approach, we have many boundaries. Different countries have different mind and interest. So it is more complex as opposed to bilateral approach. And also, in terms of our requirement for international cooperation, we focus on interagency coordination for bilateral approach. But for multilateral approach, because we probably should have a hub, a regional hub, so that we collaborate with international frameworks. So it is more complex as opposed to a bilateral approach. And the bilateral approach, interagency capacity of doing interagency coordination is a sort of a prerequisite for a multilateral approach. So we focus on coordination capacity to be strengthened, interagency cooperation for a bilateral approach, but for multilateral approach, we closely work with international framework. I will talk about that in details in a minute. Okay. And first of all, let me talk about the bilateral approach. I was involved in this project for more than 10 years, and which shows integrated approach takes really time. This is a Ramsar site, Montreux record listed Ramsar site, Anzali in Iran. And this is a source to sea approach that we did. Anzali wetland itself is here. It is connected to the Caspian Sea. And we didn't focus just activities within the wetland, but also we focused on the river basin itself. And we see we have, or they have many different sub ecosystems such as this. It is complicated. And we did covered many varieties of microecosystems as part of integrated approach. And drivers of programs are diverse: sewage, sediment, and dumping programs, and also irrigation fishing. And the first thing that we did was to set up integrated wetland management committee composed of many different agencies and sectors. And to establish such an integrated committee, we supported them to develop provincial degree, state degree, to coordinate those different sectors and agencies. And this is probably one of the parameters, social parameters, to see how integrated approach functions. And secondly, we did zoning. We have to have specific areas for ecotourism and also buffer zone. We can do some integrated activities such as education and also economic activities with local groups, NGOs, and so on. And this is kind of land management can be a good indicator for integrated approach as well. And also, in terms of ecosystem, we have to look at not only fishes within the wetland, but also semi-animals like birds. This is a pelican flying around the Caspian Sea, going to Russian areas and coming back to wetland to nest. So And also there are some migrating fishes, so we have to look at those migration, and we have to protect. We have to think about the spawning areas, also feeding areas, and so on. So it is important to look at migrating species such as this. This is also a scientific indicator. And also we have to look at the water quality and quantity as it has been talked about. We could do some simulation to see how water level fluctuates in relation to changes in sea level of Caspian Sea, which is affected to water level of wetland. And sedimentation, because of wetland, in many cases, a destination of many impacts, sediment and also chemicals and whatever it is, coming to the wetland. So we have to look at problems coming to outside of wetland. And we looked at, we did put in sediment, control facilities in the upper area of wetland. And also participation of many different groups is very important. And we closely worked with a women group for ecotourism, and that was very successful. And also education participation by children is quite important. As you can see, we did a youth session this morning, and raising the next generation is quite important. So we did that as well. And since time strengths, I'd like to move on to multilateral approach, working with international framework. Okay, this is a map of, there are many maps of this kind, biogeographic maps, and this was prepared by WWF. There are many data, so this is just an example. What I'm trying to say, to show you, is that this is a national distribution of plants and animals. But in fact, we have, like this, we manage lands based on political reasons. This is categories set by United Nations. They have 5 categories. So linking biogeographic distribution and also our political map is very important. But it is not really come together. They don't come together in many cases. And CBD recognize the importance of a regional approach. And last year in COP15, they established 18 regional and sub-regional entity for capacity development. And I sit in a member of this ILEC, Informal Advisory Science and Technology Advisory Group. And we, in total, of 18 centers, and we closely work with CCAD in Central America region. And this is what I meant by working with hub, international hub, to do a multilateral approach is, I think, is one way to do it. And this region, Central America, the size of the area is about 1.5 area of Japan, the size of Japan. And there are many countries, 7 countries congregated in this corridor linking South and North Americas. And because there are many countries, we have, or they have, many national borders. And if there are many national borders, there are many transboundary ecosystems. And as I mentioned earlier, that geographical, biogeographical map and also management, political map do not come together, so that there has to be a mechanism to go through those boundaries. And it is very challenging, but we have, JICA, we have 4 areas as pilots. 1, 2, 3, 4 areas. And Dominican Republic is just one single country because Haiti is not a member of CCAD. So we have, this is exceptional. But there is a boundary between protected area and also a community located just outside of protected area. So we are trying to link in park authority and that community. But other 3 areas, we are trying to coordinate 2 to 3 different countries through CCAD. And there is a famous Torfino Transboundary Biosphere Reserve. It has been successful because very important source of water resource is shared by 3 countries, so that they declared Torfino Transboundary Biosphere Reserve. And we are trying to take this approach, but it's not easy, but we're discussing those countries through CCAD's mechanisms such as technical committee and also ministers meeting. They have regularly organized ministers and technical committee. So we show them pilot activities and how happy people on the ground are to send messages to higher ranking officers. And particularly, I'd like to have your kind attention, particularly for this one, Silver Maya area. This is a transboundary, source to sea. We're trying to take source to sea approach, but probably some of you in this room might know this, but the national border has not been determined clearly yet. It is discussed at the ICJ, and people on the ground, the mindset of the people on the ground, and politicians are different. I should be careful to talk about this kind of sensitive issues, but I see different groups of people have different ideas, different mindset, and we work on the ground. So we're trying to support the people on the ground and send messages to solve national issues, and taking an approach such as source to sea is quite good, but it is really demanding. And also, it is very sensitive in many cases, so that this is my last slide. We have to be careful when we talk about, in this conference as well. We have to be careful. If we say, to particular people, we talk about the transboundary issues, but they don't want to, some people do not want to even hear there are transboundary issues, and also some people do not want to even hear that they share public goods such as water, resource of water by several countries. But people on the ground has different mindset. So it's very interesting, but it is very challenging. So, and also, I'd like to just point out that we are smart enough to come up with some good tools and instruments. And as I am a practitioner, I often use these transboundary biosphere reserves and EBSA Ramsar site, Alejandro-san talked about the Ramsar site, transboundary Ramsar sites, and also World Heritage sites. And also, I didn't write it down, but we now have OECM. So it's up to us how wisely utilize those tools and instruments to reach what we want to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hasegawa. Now that you mentioned about politicians, I think it's inevitable that maybe the discussion will focus on that. But anyway, we try to avoid it, but actually there are key players in natural resources management. We got a message from Inge-san that she's already connected. Can we call
Yes,
in Inge-san
I'm
before
ready,
she boards
yes.
her plane? Inge, are you there? Okay. Yeah, please go on.
Yes, I'm ready. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I'm so very sorry for the trouble in my presentation. So now, the conclusion of the presentation, let me share. Here we go. This is the relevance or linkage with the Convention on Biological Diversity. And now let me share about the Global Biodiversity Framework. And now I come to the last slide for the conclusion. Sustainable lake management is a general framework of lake management, and some approach, particularly the ILBF, project vision have been highlighted in the World Lake Conference with some important milestones. It is strengthened by 2 UN resolutions, and this is in line with and reinforced for its implementation by the global binding mechanism within the framework of the Convention on Biological Diversity. I think that's all I would like to share. I thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Inge. We could understand that she's in a hurry because she's about to board her flight. So she will likely miss the panel discussion because she cannot do it inside the airplane. Okay, thank you so much, Inge. Have a safe flight. That's the magic of technology. We can participate in a meeting even if we are at the airport, but not inside the airplane. Maybe in the future that would happen. Okay, our next panelist is Mr. Junko Nishikawa, and we are actually very honored that we have a representative here from the Ministry of Environment of Japan. Yeah, Ms. Nishikawa, please.
Okay, so thank you very much, Lenny, for the introduction. And first of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to the co-organizer of the World Lake Conference, Dr. David Hamilton from Griffith University, as well as Dr. Kaz Takemoto from ILEC, to invite me to the conference and also giving me opportunity to present in the colloquium today. Okay, so because Ms. Inge, the previous presenter, the Indonesian colleague, made a great presentation on the global context on the sustainable lake management, and Mr. Hasegawa also gave us a regional transboundary perspective to be considered. So I hope I can give some national perspective how we can manage the lake management, and I believe Mr. Yamamoto, the foreign presenter, gave a more local perspectives and for the localized action. So I think this is a kind of good combination of the perspective. Okay, so in Japan, we experienced rapid economic growth from the 1950s to 1970. And during that time, we had a swift industrial development, but at the same time, we had to experience the rapid deterioration of the water quality in rivers, lakes, and other water bodies. As you see the picture, these are the rivers and bay in Japan, which are quite polluted and sometimes clogged by waste. So in order to address those challenges, we developed several laws, the national legislation. The first one is a basic law for environmental pollution control, which is currently renamed as Basic Environment Law. So this is a kind of fundamental legislation for the environmental governance in the country. And under the law, we have two kind of standards. And one is focusing on human health, so regulating heavy metal, agrochemical, and other which are harmful to the human beings. And the other standards are for the conservation of the living environment for humans as well as the organism on the planet. So we try to control nutrient and other pollutant which could cause the eutrophication of lakes. And under the basic law, we have the Water Pollution Control Act. And when we developed this act, this is kind of the advancement from the locally specific regulation to nationwide regular uniform regulation. And we set the effluent standards across sectors and also impose direct penalties for the violations. And as you see the pictures, the Water Pollution Control Act lay foundation of the water governance, and above that, we have an area-specific regulation, and also, importantly, we always give some discretion and authority for local government to take some extra actions. One, they can choose to impose more stringent standards depending on the local circumstances, and also even increase the substances to be regulated based on the context. As a result of those control measures, including effluent regulation, sewage treatment, dredging, habitat conservation, water quality in freshwater ecosystem has been significantly improved over time. As you see, I need to learn how to use it. So these are the penetration rate of the wastewater treatment plant in some river. And this blue bar shows the decrease of the concentration of the BOD. And it has a huge drop over years. However, we still have many challenges, especially in lakes, which has different characteristics from rivers and other kind of the lotic water system. So in lakes, the achievement rate of environmental standards are in general worse compared to those in rivers and coastal areas. And one of the reasons of that is that lakes are characterized as a semi-closed ecosystem, which is quite prone to the accumulation of pollutant. So we require time to improve and recover the deteriorated ecosystem. Therefore, in addition to the universal regulation, we have decided to adopt additional measures, especially for the lakes. And we developed a specialized law only for lakes. Under the law, we require the local prefectures to develop lake water conservation plan so that they can take a kind of source-to-lake approach to regulate daily pollution load from watershed and designate protected areas and priority areas for the non-point source controls, so non-point source pollution, and sometimes regulate structure and usage of facility for aquaculture and livestock farming. And at the present, we have 11 designated lakes under the law in Japan, and Lake Biwa is one of them. So those lakes are more prone to the human activities and the pollution across that. And lake water quality conservation plans covers many variety of measures for integrated lake management. So as I said, it's a source to lake approach. So in addition to the sewage treatment in the upstream of the watershed, we also train farmers and collaborate with fishermen to adopt the optimized use of fertilizers and also adoption of the water-saving farming practices. And we work a lot with livestock farmers as well to cyclically kind of recycling the animal manure for composting, and then also the crop feed which can be produced from the compost can be utilized to livestock again. It's also cyclical process. And some agriculture effluent is reused several times prior to flowing into lakes so that they can consume as much as pollutant nutrient prior to going into lake. So as consequences, we see the huge reduction of nutrient and pollutant, like nitrogen and phosphorus can be reduced by 25 to 75%. This is the example of the one lake, but the other lakes has a similar results on that. Now, still, we have many urgent challenges. And one of the challenge is definitely comes from the climate change impact. So we see the constant increase in the water temperature. As you see here, this is the water temperature in some lakes. This is the upper layer, this is the bottom layer, and both of them are quite constantly increasing, which quite affects the water cycle within the lakes. And also, unfortunately enough, we have huge decline in fishery resources in many lakes and coastal areas as well, partly due to the climate change, the temperature change, and also as a reason has a habitat loss and also change of the nutrient compositions like that. Invasion of alien species are also quite problematic, and excessive growth of aquatic plant can be observed in some lakes, and which prevents transportation and tourism for the lakes. So we try to engage the local communities as much as possible for the decision-making process. And some lakes explore to apply new indicators for the community engagement and try to involve them in the PDCA cycle of the lake management. So there are several, how can I say, the indicators for the rating. So we request the resident to make a rating of the lakes from the indicator like a quality of water, smell, waste, tranquility, and abundance of fishery resource, and what kind of emphasis they want to put in lakes. So depending on the needs and priority of the local communities, how can I say, the rating system can be also changed. And some lakes put more focus on the landscape and tourism. So they put more priority on the quality of water and tourist attractiveness. And other lakes have more emphasis on the livelihood of communities. So they put more rating to the abundance of fishery resource. And by doing so, they can know the current status of the lake and in which direction they should pursue for. So this is one of the trials we are doing. So this is the last slide. I think the lake has unique characteristics which is semi-closed ecosystem. So it's easier to kind of control the affecting factors compared to the oceans and other open water, and which is also susceptible to surrounding human activities. So because of this relatively long retention time, some which accumulates the track record of the past activities. So it's required time to change, and also it's need to consider how much activity has been made in the past and where we are now from those track record. So in conclusion, I think lakes can be served as a barometer of ecosystem health, which has a potential applicability to be a great testing ground for the countermeasure, whether it is successful or not, and also can be a leading model for other water bodies. So if we can make good for the lake environment, then we can apply such lessons and techniques for other water bodies as well. As I said, this because lakes are more susceptible to human activities and more, how can I say, close to our activities. So I understand that post Agenda 2030 discussion has been underway these days. And I think mainstreaming sustainable lake management can be quite important in international agenda setting. And we can have very good lessons and experiences to be heard from other international communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nishikawa. She's very modest. She didn't mention in her first slide that she is the director of the Office of Environmental Management of Coastal Seas of the Ministry of Japan. And thank you for echoing the theme of the World Lake Conference, the 20th World Lake Conference, Lakes as Sentinels of Integrated Basin Management. Our next or last speaker is from the very popular prefecture in Japan where Lake Biwa is. May I call in Mr. Naoya Yamamoto, the director of the Lake Biwa Environmental Conservation and Restoration Division.
Thank you, Rennie, for your kind introduction about me and my prefecture. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Naoya Yamamoto. I'm here today on behalf of the Shiga Prefectural Government, Japan. It's a pleasure to speak with you about the Mother Lake goals, a local framework to promote collaboration among various stakeholders. Today, I'd like to talk about 4 main topics. Let me begin with a brief introduction. First, I'd like to share some basic facts about Lake Biwa. It's the largest lake in Japan. It's also one of the oldest lakes in the world, often called an ancient lake. And about 11% of Japan's population depends on its water. On August 27, 1984, Shiga Prefecture hosted the first World Lake Conference on the shore of Lake Biwa. It's a great honor that the United Nations has designated this date as World Lake Day. Now let me move on to the key environmental and social challenges facing Lake Biwa. There are 3 major challenges. First, the ever-changing lake environment. Lake Biwa has undergone drastic changes due to climate change and human activity. Second, the presence of multiple stakeholders with diverse interests. The lake supports about 14.5 million people, both inside and outside Japan Prefecture, Shiga Prefecture. Because of this, there are many stakeholders with different needs, making coordination complex and sometimes difficult. Third, a gap between the SDGs and local level action. While the SDGs provide global direction, connecting them to local realities remains a challenge. Let's take a closer look at the first challenge, the changing lake environment. As you can see here, it has evolved over time, and we've had to continually update our policies in response. These challenges are even more urgent because they are strongly connected to the global issue of climate change. To address them, we need a shared commitment. The more stakeholders we bring together, the stronger our collective response will be. Another key issue is managing the interests of various stakeholders. As shown here, Lake Biwa and its basin serve many purposes. They provide drinking water, support agriculture and industry, sustain fisheries and forestry, and serve as a hub for tourism and recreation, benefiting around 14.5 million people. Each sector, agriculture, industry, tourism, and others, has its own stakeholders. Their interests can overlap or even conflict, making coordination quite challenging. Now let's look at the third challenge, the gap between global SDGs and local action. For example, SDG 6 focuses on sanitation and clean water. This is a serious issue in many parts of the world, but here in Shiga, we've already achieved 99.2% coverage in wastewater treatment. So in some cases, the SDGs can feel disconnected from local realities. A recent survey shows that only 32.7% of people who are aware of the SDGs actually take action to protect the environment. Clearly, there's a gap between awareness and action. That's where the Mother Lake goals come in, a local initiative to connect global goals with everyday action. Now that I've introduced the MLGs, let's take a closer look. The Mother Lake goals, or MLGs, are our version of the SDGs designed specifically for Lake Biwa. While the SDGs have 17 goals, the MLGs focus on 13 goals to be achieved by the year 2030. So why are the Mother Lake goals necessary? There are three key reasons. First, they help build a sense of ownership of Lake Biwa among local people. This is because the MLGs were created through a more inclusive and local process than the SDGs. Many people took part in shaping the MLGs: residents, businesses, researchers, and government officials, through community meetings and even social media. The more people get involved, the more ownership they feel. That's how the MLGs help empower the community. Second, the MLGs support flexible collaboration. As shown here, the Mother Lake Goals Promotion Committee serves as an open platform where anyone can participate, individuals, groups, or companies. Instead of being tightly structured, this commitment is designed to share information and encourage collaboration among all stakeholders. So let me show you some examples of how the MLGs are being put into action. Stakeholders, such as local residents, companies, and researchers, act independently, but also collaborate when needed. The Shiga Prefectural government also plays an active role, not only through partnerships, but also by running its own programs aligned with the MLGs. Next, we focus on promoting a deeper understanding of Lake Biwa and its basin. Whether working independently or together, stakeholders need to stay informed about the current state of the lake and its surroundings. That's why we review progress toward each goal every year and share the results with the public. As you see in this slide, the evaluations are visualized using graphics and color coding to help everyone clearly understand the progress of the MLGs. In addition to regular activities, we hold an annual conference to bring all stakeholders together. We truly value face-to-face discussions like this one. They help build meaningful connections. To conclude, I'd like to briefly go over the key points once again. There are 4 main takeaways from today's presentation. First, Lake Biwa is Japan's largest and one of the oldest lakes in the world, supporting about 11% of the country's population. Second, the lake faces major environmental and social challenges, changes in the lake environment, complex stakeholder relationships, and the gap between global goals and local action. Third, the Mother Lake goals were created to address these challenges, with 2030 as a target year. Fourth, the MLGs are important because they foster a sense of ownership, empower stakeholders to act flexibly, and promote a deeper understanding of the lake and its basin. This concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Yamamoto-san. Actually, the first time I heard about the MLGs, I was really impressed. And giving the stakeholders a buy-in into the MLG, I think it's an effective way of meaningful participation. So that ends the panel's presentation. It's not the end of the International Colloquium panel discussion. And can someone pull Dr. Takemoto inside the room? Okay. I think we can start because all the panelists are here. And again, thank you so much for your very, very interesting presentations. It stimulates a lot of thinking. And maybe we can get some key points from your presentations that we could suggest to be included in the declaration, in the Brisbane Declaration. And so to start the ball rolling, so to speak, is from all the presentations, we saw that there are components for good water governance and for implementing the source-to-sea approach. There are the laws, the conventions. In fact, Inge talked also about the Convention on Biological Diversity, resolutions, the UN resolutions, the frameworks, mechanism and models, be it hydrological model or management model. So I'd like to discuss in this panel discussion and to get your insights also are, what are the biggest opportunities and barriers for implementing the source-to-sea approach across different regions, and either to your respective region or country? Did you see some barriers and opportunities that you're trying to cultivate those opportunities now and addressing the barriers? So anyone can start talking, and also our keynote speakers and David and Dr. Kasu can also join us here. Yeah. Okay, Alejandro, thank you.
Thank you very much, Lenny. We were talking during the break time that this source-to-sea approach is somehow similar to previous efforts. Again, that basically take into account the very beginning of the water way, through rivers, through underground waters, through lakes, and to the ocean. But the important part basically is that yes, it's necessary to take into account this as a whole system, but anyway, it's important to remember that each one of the components of the system needs to be managed in a different way. Lakes probably are the best example about that, because as it was mentioned, the long retention time and the sedimentation processes. And also because it takes a lot of pollutant and requires a lot of time to show degradation, but when the degradation arises, so it requires a lot of time to show results after the management process is developed. So in that aspect, I think that the source to see, it could be used as a very effective tool, but definitely the parts, the components, it needs to be managed with a very, very careful approach. And in that part, particularly, I think the governance part is very, very important. The technical aspects are necessary, the funding is necessary, but not taking into account the stakeholders or to involve them properly, it basically will lead to a failure in some part of the way.
Thank you. Can we hear from the other panelists about your experience? Yeah, Regina, please.
Thank you. Most of the work I've been involved with is in the Pacific Island countries, but one of the most significant challenges that's not unique to there is the fragmentation of governance. And I mean, just within the WASH space, so water supply, sanitation and hygiene, there is never a single ministry. There's always half a dozen, in some countries, 10 or 20 ministries involved. So I think going then out to a catchment approach or a source to see approach, that just balloons that number even more. So that's going to be a significant challenge. I do think that, and that's not changeable. That's structural. That is the way it is. But I do think that the concept of source to see is a concept that is easily understood and can be a narrative that those different agencies can use to connect with each other and to coordinate, not without significant coordination by one of those. I think there's going to need to be a lead. I think also ecosystem services is another language that resonates within many ministries. They appreciate that ecosystems need to be protected, partly because of the importance of protecting environments in their own right, but also because they are fundamental for many ecosystem services that humans need. And I think, so the systems approach of ecosystem services and source to see is potentially one way of helping to create a storyline that different ministries and different agencies might be able to see themselves participating in.
Yeah, some other, please.
Thank you very much. Not only just lakes or wetlands, any kinds of ecosystems, if it is integrated, we see we have to go beyond many boundaries. And as I have mentioned in my presentation, there are physical boundaries and also functional boundaries. And whatever we do, it has to be scientifically based, science. I mean, the numbers and also simulated directions are very important. But in reality, science is not perfect. And in reality, people have a different value judgment and mindsets, so that we have to basically talk to people to make friends. I mean, so opportunity is here. Opportunity is to do an integrated approach, to have an integrated approach. We have to talk to people and we have to make friends. And also, I would like to highlight the importance of traditional knowledge. We see this climate change, and there are some knowledge we have sort of forgotten, so that we talk to local knowledge, local people, to apply their knowledge is very, very important. So that is my comment.
Okay, so my perspective is that, as Regina mentions, the government sectors are often fragmented, and we are working in silos. So it's always have difficulty to work together in a real sense. But these days, in Japan, we see some different movement coming up. As I mentioned in my presentation, the water quality is somehow improved in Japan, but still, we don't see much of the fishery resources has been coming back. We don't see the full recovery of the ecosystem as yet. So now we have the common goal of different sectors that how we can restore the livelihood of the local communities, which are much relying on the fishery resources and other water resources. And now we are working closely together with the industry sector, fishermen, and also the wastewater treatment sectors, how to achieve the recovery of the ecosystem in a real sense. So I see that kind of change in the mindset of the global government official can be one of the key to change the to realize the source to see approach. And the community, as Mr. Hasegawa mentioned, is definitely the critical importance because we depends on the needs and priorities on the local community and what they want to achieve is our common goal to work with.
Yes. If there are other views from the other panelists, please. Otherwise, I will do some follow-ups of the issues raised.
Okay, let me give you another perspective. I think working together to preserve the lake environment, it's very important to have inclusiveness where many citizens participate in preserving the lake. And let me give you an example. Lake Biwa supplies water to the Kyoto city next to Shiga Prefecture through Lake Biwa Canal. And in this April, Kyoto city government and Shiga Prefecture government signed a memorandum of understanding to raise awareness about water coming from Lake Biwa. And now we are planning to coordinate various kinds of events together. And I hope that both Kyoto City and Shiga Prefecture will enhance our relationships through, preserving water together. Yeah, that's my perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Yamamoto-san. And David, you have something to add, or?
I guess what I found interesting was thinking about some of Regina's challenges that she outlined, and that was that some of the small communities have the most acute water challenges and are sometimes being left off the global map. They're just simply not being seen, they're not being recognized, and they're not large enough to be significant. So just thinking of ways in which we can engage locally to be able to achieve much more globally, I think is the issue.
Yeah. Thank you, David. From what I got, some key points is that fragmentation is really happening in the real world, and it's difficult to change because it's also influenced by the political situation, the economy, and so what would be the best way really to not to solve but to work in that kind of environment? I think that's a big challenge. And I'm glad that it was mentioned on the science and policy approach, but science is not perfect, that's true. And the importance of traditional knowledge. I remember I was talking to a fisherman in Laguna Lake, and he said, oh, it's easy to say if the water quality is poor. When there are plenty of birds, it means the water quality is poor. I said, oh, how come? And he said, because there are many birds, because the fish are going to the surface and they eat the fish. So that's an indication. I said, yes, there's some science into it. It's just that they do not explain it scientifically, but we know there is science into it. And also, I like this way really of talking to people and making them part of the story, the narrative. And I think it was in the presentation of Yamamoto-san in the Mother Lake Goals that this sense of belonging to the movement really makes good outcome. So those are my key takeaways. Now, may I request Dr. Eugene? Yes, please. Are you raising your hand? No. Okay. I would like to invite the SciComm members to also give some points of discussion, hearing from all the presentations this afternoon. Yes, Dr. Hillary.
Oh, thank you, panelists. I like the idea of the Mother Lake in the sense that it gives people points of engagement. The question that I have is really to get people to understand that what they do at their local, even homestead situation, contributes to a very long-term goal. So water quality might not even be in the person's mind, but how do we get them to realize that what they do contribute to the long-term goal so that so they can see the benefit immediately for themselves? To say if I reuse waste from my cows, I get better yields. That's what they get. But you know that ultimately you are aiming for better water quality. So how do you engage them to be part of the story, even if they are not really directly linked to the overall goal? Thank you.
Okay. Any more? Yeah, Dr. Ajit.
I would like to, kind of express my sincere gratitude to all the panelists. It was wonderful presentation by each one of you. You flagged a lot of issues. One thing which was, kind of, we, after the tea break, we discussed is how the intersectoral coordination or interministerial coordination can happen, which is a big challenge. One framework that is integrated coastal zone management framework, ICZM framework, which is particularly for this source to see in the many countries, I think this has been implemented. We found that lead to a whole of government approach, like how to break the silos. So whole of government approach that works, where there is a stake and each that also lead to intersectoral, not only the coordination, but the intersectoral, the policy integration also happens there. Like, say, for example, the conservation, let's say for in the protected area, we found that the fishery department, their interest collides because they think that the people are not being allowed into it. So there we used to do some kind of perceptional change of the communities. Like when they see that due to conservation of or in a protected area, it lead to a lot of better spawning and more successful, kind of breeding migration, which lead to production, enhancement in the production. Only thing that here, what we also discussed about the stakeholder participation. Many times, kind of the scientists and the managers, they think that the local community or the fishers, they are illiterate, they can't understand. But many ecosystem services, they flow quietly, so they get ignored. So it's better to, I think we experimented with a participatory research where we involved the local fishers. The scientists explained to them how in a protected area, the better spawning and the nursery ground, which is enhancing the production. So it led to a win-win situation. Earlier, that was a contradictory, like these fishermen, they used to, kind of raise their voice and try to sneak into the protected area unauthorizedly. So these perceptual changes is important, apart from that whole of government, which is where the intersectoral coordination and interministerial coordination is institutionalized for that governance mechanism. So this is what I thought for source to see what you mentioned, that challenges are numerous, but it sometimes works well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Dr. Patnaik, because I'm about to ask, how can we, you as practitioners, better connect scientific research with policy and also with the needs of the community? If you have some concrete examples to share, that will be very good. Alejandro, please, or?
I think that a key aspect to involve stakeholders basically is for them to understand that whatever happens to the water bodies, to the basin itself, it's affecting them. And this is kind of dumb to mention. It's like kind of obvious when we are here, but for them, it's not so easy. There is a case which I think is very interesting because now the tequila producers in Mexico are very much into the sustainable management of forest areas. And 5 years ago, they were very enthusiastic about getting rid of those forest areas to plant more agave, which is the plant which is used to gain tequila. But they changed when an officer, high-ranked officer, convinced them that it was against their own interests to continue this process because basically they require water to produce. They don't require only the agave, they require the water for the process. And then they went to a process like 2 years talking, defining a policy, and they signed the policy in a voluntary basis. And now they are very much in the contrary situation, and they are investing money to recover part of the forest that was taken away because of this situation. So basically, the key point here is that this officer identified that interest point for them, it was money. And he was capable enough to provide information to convince them that it was better for them to change the process. So basically, it goes that way with farmers, with a livestock producer, and so on.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'd like to maybe share 2 examples that are related to your question. I might not technically answer it very directly, but they both relate to the Pacific. One is that thinking about water security as a standalone issue hasn't been productive in leading to action. And there was some recognition a few years ago by some leading stakeholders in the Pacific that we need to put water security into the framing and the lenses that people are talking about in the Pacific. And in that case, that's disasters. It's climate resilience, but it's a bit broader than that. It's disasters. And so they embarked on a piece of work around how do we get water security into other sectors by framing it in the language of other sectors and the interests of other sectors. And they did, we played a role in supporting them do this with engaging with stakeholders across a range of different sectors, but also across the water sector. And there were some pretty interesting findings from that. Many people who work in the water sector cannot articulate why water security is important for resilience. And if we're not able to articulate that ourselves, it's no wonder that people in other sectors don't hear those messages from us. So that's the first really important thing. And the other was they really tried to identify entry points to mainstream water security into the agendas of other sectors and finding ways to create forums and opportunities to be talking across sectors So not always going to talk at the water conferences, but going to talk at the food conference and the energy conference about water. So there's some interesting approaches and recognition, I think, in the Pacific that investments in water are declining, but they're desperately needed. We need to mainstream in other sectors. The other example I wanted to share was around local and traditional knowledge. And in particular, in thinking about rural communities and supporting them to develop climate resilience in their water supply systems, for example, there's very little data in terms of empirical, scientifically measured or modelled data. And there's a lot of uncertainty still around some of the ways that climate will impact on water resources. But an approach that has proved useful with some of those rural communities is to build on the local knowledge, particularly of elders. They've experienced disasters before, and creating an opportunity for them to talk about what those disasters looked like, how their infrastructure systems were affected, how that impacted on people, created a dialogue between the older and younger people within communities when they started talking about, well, those things are going to happen again, and maybe they're going to happen more often and maybe a little bit more extreme. How did we manage with those in the past? So even without the data, and they're created a bit by uncertainty, and sometimes just they're really remote, they're not going to access data. There are ways that you can build on the strengths of local knowledge to build resilience through past experiences, and it has the added benefit of essentially revitalising cultural knowledge, and that's a real motivator for many people in rural communities to take action.
Yeah. That's really an experience on the ground. And you may want to add?
May I?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to talk about an example that I did in El Salvador. One day, JICA, our office based in El Salvador, called me up and invited to visit one of the Ramsar site to think about future project. And I visited, and I went to the site, and I met the local people, and observation is very important. And what I saw was that it was a beautiful Ramsar site, and I'm not blaming local people, but people are washing clothes in the beautiful spring water, connected to Ramsar site. And I'm not trying to, I was not really trying to stop people washing clothes in the beautiful spring, But what I'm trying to say is that people often take it for granted, beautiful environment, beautiful forest, beautiful lakes, and so on. They are there, so they don't recognize the true values to be conserved and protected. We think, those environment are special and beautiful, but for some local people, they often do not identify the intrinsic values of those environments. So in that kind of case, it is good to have, like me, coming from outside, to see the environment and try to evaluate and come up with some countermeasures. So I visited those Ramsar site and created a project to strengthen the countermeasures, conservation strategies. And also, it has been discussed, you have just talked about traditional knowledge. And I often identify traditional knowledge. Traditional knowledge refers to many things, and I would like to support local people utilizing traditional knowledge, such as forgotten, for instance, forgotten fruit, those forgotten, not really agricultural commodities, but locally consumed products such as traditional knowledge has to be strengthened, and we could come up with better use of those knowledge. And it would be good. It will be good if we could support them using those knowledge, and also, sorry, going back to intrinsic values. If they do not recognize the importance of those environment and also programs, we should relate those problems to local people's daily life. What is going to happen actually? I said earlier that scientific data are not perfect. But based on the scientific values, scientific data, we have to relate those numbers to daily life of local people, then persuade them to improve countermeasures to solve the problems. Sorry, sorry, my comments are kind of fragmented and jump around, but I guess I stop here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Ishikawa.
If you don't have time, I can skip, but
Yeah, please, please.
okay. So let me give another example for the taking actions and community stakeholder engagement. Currently, in my country, we are discussing the possible amendment of the Water Pollution Control Act. And the essence of the possible amendment is how to give more flexibility or room for flexibility for the local communities in the decision-making process. So, and also the PDCA cycle on the policy-making process. So it is a community who can decide what status of lakes or coastal areas can be achieved, depending on their preferences and needs and priorities. And then science comments that how that kind of status can be achieved from which level of the nutrient and which level of the pollutant. So scientists can develop the model to try to simulate and replicate the ideal status in the model, and then the government work to realize that ideal status. So the goal can be set by the communities. Science can set the direction to achieve that goal, and the government work together to realize that on the ground. So the government work very hard to talk to the industry and talk to the fishermen and then say that, okay, in order to achieve that goal, we need some more pollutant, some more nutrient or less pollutant to be achieved, and then how we can work together with those industry. So that kind of process is trying to be integrated in the legislation. Currently, this is a big challenge for us as well, but still I think it's kind of the critical way to make stakeholder engagement in a possible.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think one thing that's very encouraging are there are already certain processes or techniques that are going on, which are very good to the stakeholders and to the environment. Because it's true, we only recognize the value of an ecosystem once it's degraded because it's not giving the services anymore. And there'll be presentations on ecosystem service, shared value assessment in the conference, and we can hear more from that. I have to bring to a close the panel discussion because we have another exciting part of our international colloquium, which is the open and interactive dialogue. So this is also like our continuation of the panel discussion to all the stakeholders' voices. And to moderate this part of the International Colloquium is Dr. Brian McIntosh of the Australian Rivers Institute and the International Water Center. Brian, please.
Well, panelists, if you'd like to stay there, you can, or if you would like to go into the audience to look back, that's also good. That's also fine. Okay, so welcome everybody to this last section of today's International Colloquium, where we are going to hear from all stakeholders. Well, at least from some voices. Everyone has a stakeholding in water, really, so it's not possible without a very large room and a very large number of people to hear from all voices. What we've tried to do, though, is to provide a nice cross-section of voices to hear from. And we're going to hear from them and give you an opportunity to ask questions as we engage in the question, what can we learn from Australia's waterways? The three guests that thank you very much all for giving up your time to come along. We'll introduce just in order of presentation. So on your right-hand side, my left, is Ashley Ferranda. Ashley, do you want to stick your hand up? So Ashley is a Quandamooka woman. Quandamooka are the first people who occupy the eastern side of Brisbane, the islands and the bay. My house is I live on Quandamooka land out that way. Then Ashley is also a senior process engineer with Jacobs, so got multiple hats. Next in line is Brad Dalrymple. Do you want to stick your hand up, Brad? Brad is the principal environmental engineer with Ocean Protect, and you'll learn a little bit more about them. But they're a company that seeks to clean up our waterways, particularly getting rid of plastic, but not just plastic. And finally, we've got Justin Brooks. Do you want to put your hand up, Justin? Justin is professor at the University of South Australia. I'd like to say to Justin, welcome to proper Australia, Queensland. That's important. So you'll begin to get the sense of some of the internal politics of Australia. So we've got Justin is a professor specializing in environmental flows and other environmental aspects of water resource management. I've asked each of our panelists, I asked them the question, what are the three most important things that we can learn from Australia's waterways? And I've got no idea what they're going to say. We're going to find out, and then we're going to get the opportunity to engage in some conversation, ask some questions. I'd like to start off by welcoming Ashley to the floor. If you could come up to the podium, Ashley. You can come around the front if you want. And the speaking to the microphone, adjust to your height. And tell us, Ashley, from a cultural perspective, a First Peoples cultural perspective, what are the three most important things that we can learn from Australia's waterways? And your slides will be in front of you down there as well.
Thanks, Brian. And hello, everyone. I am a proud descendant of the Quandamooka people. They're the traditional owners of the Moreton Bay area, as Brian mentioned. So from the mouth of the Brisbane River, down the coast to the mouth of the Logan River, the Bay Islands and Moreton Bay there. So one of the islands that you'll see, you might know, is North Stradbroke Island. It's the larger one down towards the south. So we call that its traditional name, Minjerribah. Oh, that's okay. Thank you. Yeah, so that land is very special to me. I live over on the mainland in Brisbane. I have most of my life, but love to visit the island as often as I can. There's many lakes there, but two of the larger ones you might have heard of are Kabura or Blue Lake, or Bumiera, which is Brown Lake. So that photo there is showing Brown Lake, and it gets its color from the tannins that leach in from around the lake there. That's probably one of my favorite places in the world to visit. It is very special for women in particular, because prior to colonization, when a woman was ready to have a baby, she would travel there because it was thought as one of the cleanest and safest places on the island. She would travel there with sisters, other mothers, and yeah, have a baby there. When I travel there, I've always been taught to dip my feet into the water because that's how we connect with our ancestors. It tells them that I've arrived on country, I'm here, please keep me safe. So I like to visit there every morning when I travel over there. Okay, so Aboriginal people have been living in Australia since time immemorial. We've got evidence of Aboriginal occupation here for over 65,000 years, and that makes us one of the oldest, or the oldest, continuous living culture on the earth. This picture here on the left is some ochre that was found in Kakadu National Park, which is in Darwin in the Northern Territory, or near Darwin, and that's over 50,000 years old. So Aboriginal people have been looking after our lands and waterways sustainably for tens of thousands of years, and we know how harsh and dry Australian climate can be, and yeah, our traditional owners have looked after it and have thrived in those harsh conditions for that long. Our water management is backed by tens of thousands of years of science and learnings and traditional knowledge. So only about 200 years ago, Australia was colonised, and that brought about a lot of changes in our waterway management with the introduction of Western water management and land management. A lot of Aboriginal people were moved from their traditional homes and sent to missions. The other photo there is of Mayora Mission, which is on North Stradbroke Island. That became home to lots of Aboriginal people from throughout southeast Queensland and even a bit further on. A lot of connection to culture and connection to country was severed at the time. A lot of people's names were changed. They were moved from their country. They weren't allowed to speak their language. They had to learn English, and weren't allowed to do traditional practices like basket weaving. A lot of things were banned. So because they were displaced, they weren't able to care for country in the ways that they were used to, and some communities still feel a lot of that loss nowadays.
Is it possible to go forward once?
Thank you. I wanted to include a story called Mirragimpa because I think it talks and demonstrates really well a lot of the philosophies and principles of Aboriginal water management. So we believe that you have to look after people upstream and people downstream of where you are. You have to look after all of the people and the things around you, but also your ancestors looked after the land for you so you could live well, and it's your responsibility to look after your future generations. So Mirragimpa is the name for the sea eagle, and the people on North Stradbroke Island would wait and look up in the sky, and when they saw Mirragimpa, they knew that it was almost time for mullets. They knew that the mullets were swimming down the creek into the ocean, but they would wait a couple of days to make sure some of the fish had swum through and could then go on to breed for next year. And then they'd all head down to the beach there with nets and sticks, and they'd set up all their nets and they'd bang on the water, and the dolphins in the bay would hear and they would know to chase the fish into the nets. So that's how they would get big feasts for their family, and they'd always make sure that there was some left for the dolphins, and the dolphins knew that, so they kept coming back. And that's it from me.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So have a little think about some of the questions you might want to ask. For Ashley, from your presentation, there's questions around place and value and stewardship and care and taking care of waterways. So we'll cycle on to our second speaker, Brad Dalrymple from Ocean Protect. Do you want to answer the question, what are the three most important things from your perspective that we can learn from Australia's waterways?
Cool. Well, I'll give it a crack, Brian. Thank you. First up, I think a key thing is the importance of stormwater. So at Ocean Protect, we put in stormwater treatment assets, we manage them, et cetera, to try and stop pollution from entering our oceans and waterways and often lakes. And fundamentally, it's really important. We stop a lot of pollution. We stop about 12 tonne a day going into Australian waterways. And a lot of people just don't recognise the fact that the #1 source of ocean plastic is stormwater runoff. And it might look really clean in Brisbane. If I know there's a lot of international visitors, you might look outside and go, Australia's a beautiful place, and it is, and it's very clean, and it is, but it sometimes isn't either. So Brisbane River flows to Moreton Bay, which is obviously Quandamurka country, which Ashley showed some images of before. And there was a recent study just last year that showed in the Moreton Bay sediment alone, there's about 7,000 tonnes of microplastics in the sediment. So 7,000 tonnes of microplastics just in the sediment. So this is a 450 millimetre bottle. It's about 1.5 billion of these if they were made of plastic. And thankfully, Brian, they're aluminium, so well done. But that's a lot of plastic pollution, and that's just one type of pollutant that washes off our streets and roads and hardstand areas. There's single-use plastics, there's heavy metals, there's hydrocarbons, there's nutrients, there's sediments, there's all sorts of nasties that flow into our waterways. I'm not sure if this works. Clicker? Oh. The green button. Miss Maestro, next slide, please. Thank you. I don't think either's working, just a heads up. To give you an idea of what we see, and this is one of our devices that we put in is called the Ocean Guard. That's an image on the top left screen. We basically put these into gully pits. So outside in the road, there's gully pits, and they capture stormwater, and then from there it goes into a pipe and then into Brisbane River, into Moreton Bay. And this is the image on the right shows what we pulled out of just 8 gully pit baskets. In a very stock standard Western Sydney street, and they were in the ground for 5 months. So that's just 8, that's what goes into 8 gully pits over a 5-month period in a fairly clean looking street in Western Sydney. So key message here to my second point. So first point, stormwater is really important. It's a major source of pollution. Second point is the overwhelming majority of pollution or plastic pollution we see in our devices is single-use plastics. So again, someone did a count of this. I think there was about 850 individual pieces of plastic, predominantly all single-use plastics, so wrappers, bottles, straws, etc., and about 130 kilograms of sediment. Now, sediment contains all sorts of nasties as well, so microplastics, hydrocarbons, etc. And the sad reality is most of our urban areas, probably 90% plus, have no stormwater treatment devices. So all that gunk, that pollution, just washes straight into our waterways and ultimately downstream. And the other sad reality is even when we put assets in like this, they often don't get cleaned out. So this pollution doesn't magically disappear. It needs to be manually cleaned out, whether it's a person with a skip or a sucker truck. But the sad reality is most of these assets, even when they are installed, don't get cleaned out. And that's one of the easiest things we can do. But fundamentally, it invariably doesn't happen. Next slide, please, Ms. Maestro. There we go. I want to finish on a good news story. So I mentioned the fact that Moreton Bay has a lot of plastic in it, all sorts of predominantly single-use plastics. And the key source of that plastic pollution is stormwater runoff. I was successful in managing to convince the Queensland government recently to stop that. So as part of the Queensland Liberal National Party commitment in the last state election, they committed to a 0 litter to bay target for Moreton Bay. So essentially, they're aspiring to achieve a massive reduction in the amount of plastic pollution entering Moreton Bay. How they're going to do that? It's by a whole bunch of things, including installing assets like this, stormwater treatment assets, but also about half of the money is going to go towards actually just maintaining and fixing up existing infrastructure. And the key thing I want you guys to take away from that, it just started with one person. Little old me sent a letter to my local member for Parliament, and a couple of years later, it basically became a $35 million election commitment by the LNP. So the guy on the left is our state premier, David Crisafulli. He's the guy in charge of the state of Queensland. He's right behind this. There's a couple other politicians involved, but fundamentally, it started off with just one person pitching an idea to a political party to do something about an obvious pollution problem. So while stormwater is a big, hairy problem, there are readily available solutions that we can put in and manage to make sure that we really go a long way towards turning the tide of plastic pollution and other pollution in our urban environments. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brad. That's great. Okay, so we'll turn to our third and final speaker, Justin Brooks from the University of South Australia. So Justin, what are the 3 most important things that we can learn from Australia's waterways?
Great, thanks, Brian. Well, I'll try and tell some stories to get to what these important points are. But I think what's important is the story that Ashley set up at the beginning when she shared her story and the story of her ancestors. For 60,000 years, we had sustainable land and water management in Australia. And then we had colonisation. And so for the last 240 years, we've modified our landscape and we've modified our waterscape. And we can see that in some of the big engineering projects that have occurred within Australia. So Australia's largest infrastructure project, engineering, was the development of the Kosciuszko scheme, where they basically turned a river around and sent it through the mountains to put water out through hydropower to drive turbines and create energy. But what that left, the river that flowed to the east, it left it with 1% of its historical flow. And that happened in the 1950s. It wasn't until 2017 that water was, well, that some environmental water was returned to the river. And there was a commitment that 20% would be returned. And how that happened, again, was a political thing. Craig Ingham, independent, went to the government, who was the government that was going to be, it did a deal with the Labor government, returned the flow to the river, and they actually toppled the incumbent Kennett government there. So water is really political and has political power. And the other place we see that is in Tasmania. Huge hydro development, around about 1,100 square kilometres of rivers, river valleys and wetlands are inundated because of hydropower. And about 36% of Tasmania's catchments all feed hydropower. Now, there was one incident in the 1970s when the Gordon River was dammed and flooded Lake Pedder. But as part of that, there was a lot of blockades and protests because not all the community was in favour of this. And one person in particular, Bob Brown, protested, was imprisoned for 19 days, but he had been elected into government. So he was enlisted into government the day he was released from prison, went on to form the Greens Party, which went on to then become the Australian Greens political party. He was the first Australian Greens senator to be elected and has had a huge impact upon the conservation movement in Australia. It's the political power of water. Australia's been undergoing significant water reform, and most of that water reform that we see is in the Murray-Darling Basin. And in 1994, it was recognised that we were taking too much water from the river and a cap was put on allocation, so no more water could be taken. But it wasn't until 2004 where the Water Act was developed, and as part of that, we had the new water allocation plan through the Murray-Darling Basin Plan and the establishment of the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder. So there's now a federal agency responsible for the purchase and management of environmental water. Because we've got a fairly sophisticated trading scheme where you can purchase and sell water like you can stock and shares, the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder could enter the market and spent $3.1 billion buying water back for the environment. And so that water can be delivered in consultation with the states back through the Murray-Darling system for different environmental outcomes, like fish spawning or creating the right habitat for fish and birds. We saw perhaps the worst drought Australia's ever seen at the beginning of this millennium. And in 2008, 2009, there was a significant water crisis where Adelaide, the city of Adelaide in South Australia, nearly ran out of water. And we've got barrages that separate the River Murray from the estuary at the Murray mouth. And that water was drying up. There was no water at the bottom end of Australia's largest river, to the point that Australia's largest river system was 1.5 metres below sea level for 300 kilometres upstream. So this was a dire problem, and it's only really been the Murray-Darling Basin Plan and the purchase of that water which has restored water back to the environment and enabled the environmental outcomes. And we see that particularly in the Coorong, the big coastal lagoon at the bottom end of the River Murray, where around about 5 million tonnes of salt is prevented for entering that lagoon because of the environmental flows. And so we do have the right then salinity conditions and flow requirements for fish and birds in that environment. So we've had a big push for water reform in getting back water quantity, but we've still got a long way to go with water quantity. And that's really a catchment issue. And if we look at Australia, about 43% of Australia is managed by pastoralists. So it's farming for cattle and sheep. So if we really want water reform, the next stage is to engage properly with our graziers, because they're the ones that manage the majority of the land, which is going to impact upon water quality. So climate change is the next threat. We're all living it. Australia's living it. We've got highly variable climate. We're going through large droughts and large floods within this environment. So we need a plan now to be able to secure water and secure our future, even in light of climate change. The cities are getting fairly safe. Every one of our major capital cities in Australia now has a desalination plant. And so we've got a climate independent solution for cities. What we don't yet have is a good solution for the regions. How do we get water back for the industries in the regions? How do we get water back for the environment? And to achieve this, we are really going to need a plan for an uncertain future. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're in an international colloquium, and we've got people from many countries around the world and 3 guests from Australia. Let's see if we can foster a little bit of dialogue. There's a set of questions going around my head about how can we grow and harness care and connection to place. There's a set of questions going around my head about how can we foster and harness the power of politics to achieve water management outcomes. But let's see what's going around your head. What kinds of questions would you like to ask to either all of our panel or one particular member of the panel? Who'd like to start us off? Excellent. And when you ask your question, could you tell everyone what your name is and where you're from?
Yep. Thanks, Mac. I'm Swaminathan Murugan from India. My question is that probably we see a macro level picture at the basin level. What about the connecting point, like the catchments? I think you spoke the cities are safe to Brad, Justin Brooks, right, Professor? So you spoke about the cities, but then the catchment lies in the region. So there is a big disconnect between these two. And you were saying that we need to have a plan for that. So I think, how do we really bridge the gap? You will have to reveal your plans and the solution. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess we need to have goodwill. What we struggle with is having connection. There's often a big divide between the agricultural sector and the environmental sector. We need to overcome that. I think what we need to think of is both. We're all stewards of the land. If you talk to a farmer, he's really concerned about his crops, his soils, and his livelihood. And there shouldn't be the divide we have between the regions and the cities, or between the environment and agriculture. And that's just a conversation. You know, if we can find some common language and some common ground, everyone wants really the same thing. We want a good, sustainable future. We just need to change the conversation so that it's not a conflict. It's we're both working towards a common goal.
Any of our other panelists want to tackle the question?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I just wanted to add to it as well. I think, well, I work at Jacobs as a process engineer in drinking water. And I think we do drinking water in big cities really, really well. But we sometimes struggle, we do struggle with drinking water and water management in remote communities. We've got a lot of Aboriginal remote communities across the country. Australia is so vast and they can be so remote and so difficult to get to. So they can often sort of be a little bit forgotten. But I think it's important to not take a one-size-fits-all approach. We can't manage a small remote community the same way that we manage big cities, and it's really important to go there and engage and listen and say, how do you want this done? How can we do it together? Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so who would like to ask the next question? Oh, okay. And if you could we get a microphone to the gentleman at the front? And if you could introduce yourself and say where you're from.
Okay, my name is Hilary Masundire from Botswana and Zimbabwe. That's a different discussion for some other time. I don't know how many of us were here this morning, where I could say we experienced what I would call catch them young. I mean, the language that those kids were speaking, you can talk to a politician in Africa and they don't know a word like plankton. So how does Japan manage to get those under 10 to understand water as an ecosystem, water as a place for enjoyment, water as a source of food? You know, it's not easy to change me from my way of thinking. I'm just too old for that. But for those kids, when they grow up now understanding that the reeds are important. There's crustaceans in the water. There's invasive species. How does Japan do that? And so I'm trying to come back to the issue of pollution and so forth. Those kids understand pollution at 5 years old. How can we, as universities, as education, how can we improve our curriculum? I mean, if you talk to African politicians about science, it's something that is beyond. But for those kids, the science is their day-to-day consumption as it were. So how can we improve our education system to catch them young so that by the age that they are not making decisions, they understand that when you make a road, you affect the ecosystem in much more ways than just digging the ground. Thank you.
Okay, so who wants to tackle
I
that question?
can have
of
a
how
first
to-
pass. It's a really great question, and I love just focusing on education for kids as well. Like I'd love to talk about that all day, really. I'll give you an example. Like I do a lot of talks around the importance of pollution and plastic pollution, all that sort of stuff. And I generally ask people, where do you think it's coming from? And most people have no idea. So most people think it's commercial fishing nets or it's littering at the beach. And I'm talking to stormwater engineers who don't know stormwater is a key source of plastic pollution, as an example. So I'd say all the questions I've asked to engineers, I'd say 95% of them would never say stormwater as a key source of plastic pollution. I gave a talk to my niece's primary school recently, Camp Hill Primary School. It's a bunch of 8 and 9-year-olds. I asked them the same question, where is the key source of plastic pollution? And I'd say 99% of them said stormwater runoff. So kids in Australia, at least, have their heads around a whole bunch of environmental issues, particularly around pollution. They have a very detailed understanding, better than the stupid adults, if I'm honest. And you've got to ask yourself, how's that happen? And I'm not a primary school teacher, but clearly there's a major focus on our education in our school curriculum around the importance of environmental issues and what to do about them, how to act appropriately. So I'm actually really optimistic that at least in Australia, we've got a generation of absolute Captain Planets, like, you know, world beaters. They know what the key issues are and how to address them. And a key part of it surely must be our education system. And it's great to hear that other parts of the world are like that as well. It gives you an insight. So must be our education system. Whatever they're doing is working, at least in Australia.
Thanks, Brad. Justin.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, you know, part of it's curriculum, but part of it is just getting kids outside, because then they start to value the environment. If I look at the students and the cohorts I come through the university, because I teach environmental science, about 50% of them come from the Adelaide Hills, so it's sort of outside of the city, or from the country areas. So we still have the interest in the environment from the city kids, but 50% of our course are coming from the Adelaide Hills, which is a greener space. So it's either their parents are more environmental and have chosen to live there, or they're just in that environment and so have that natural love for it and want to go on and you know, have an impact in that area. So I think we need to get kids outside. We need, you know, part of it's formal education, part of it's just getting them out there, getting them out hiking and the outdoor activity, because if they know about it, they start to value it. And if they value it, then they get a career in it and they influence their friends. And so I think it's more than just the formal education, it's getting outside to play.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, a third question over there. Yep, lady in the green. We can get a microphone is coming your way. And if you could introduce yourself and where you're from.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Smith. I'm from the United States. I live in Chicago on the shore of Lake Michigan. And I moderated the panel this morning with our youth leaders. I would love to just build on the question that was just asked. One of the things that came up in our panel this morning was, how can we make sure that we are involving youth? And by youth, I mean anywhere from our Meta River Rangers who are here this morning. I think maybe we had 8 or 9-year-old, all the way up to maybe their early 30s. But how can we involve them in a way that's not tokenizing and just having them weigh in on an issue here or there, but that can involve them from start to finish in campaigns, in policies, in a way that's much more integrated than I currently see in many parts of the world. I'm wondering if there are any examples of that, or ways that we can make sure that we are inclusive of youth voice from start to finish, because that's what I hear over and over again from youth is, I don't want to just be there on a panel. I want to be there for making the plan and for implementing the plan and being able to be part of that. So just wondering if we could have some reflections on that as well. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So we can either go to the room or to our panelists.
That's a tricky one. One thing that is getting pushed a little bit in Australia now is lowering the voting age. And so, you know, taking it from the current 18 down to 15. There is, I guess, you know, we need to empower the youth. And one way of doing that is to give them voting rights. Whether, you know, they're fully informed at 15 to be voting, but at least we're having a conversation now about it, which starts to, you know, empower. And eventually we might get to the point where, you know, we will topple governments with the youth vote, absolutely.
I think there's a few, I definitely like that. I love giving the votes to 15-year-olds at least. I think a few things come to mind at least. Number one, recognizing where kids are at. Like I feel as though conferences like this, for example, whilst it's great to see a whole bunch of cool kids, cool people like you guys, they're very expensive and they're actually out of reach for most young people. So, you know, how do people engage with information or, you know, whatever, is via their phone. So reaching them on where they're at, social media platforms. So it's great to see sort of young people getting involved with sort of, I guess, influencing the next generation in a really positive direction. So basically making those educational resources, whether it's a Netflix video, whether it's a doco, whether it's a book, whatever, just making it free and readily accessible. But also I think just treating kids with respect. When I was growing up, kids were like, you know, thou shalt be seen and not heard. I think it'd be great to move away from that sort of rhetoric, at the very least, and recognizing that they actually have a lot of value to add to discussions, because fundamentally they have a greater piece of the future than, let's face it, old people like me and others.
Yeah, I just want to second that as well. Like kids these days, they have their phones and their internets, and they are so curious, and we can like get a grasp on that and use it. And I guess, yeah, just reiterating, like when they do want to become involved, foster that and encourage them rather than, yeah, this children should be seen and not heard philosophy. And I guess, yeah, it's up to all of us in this room to make the space for it and give them the time.
That's great. Thanks, Ashley and Brad and Justin. So we are about out of time. We've got enough time for maybe one final reflection on where we've seen youth involvement or engagement down the front. And if you could introduce yourself and where you're from.
Lindsay Hunt, Jarvis Hunt Consultancy. I'm a phycologist. Now, about half the room is currently asking themselves, what on earth is that? If you ask Google, it will ask you whether you meant psychologist, which is half of the problem. There's a three-pronged approach here. Firstly, it's reaching out and certainly improving our education system to include the youth and get them educated at a very early age. There's a gap. And Brad, you actually alluded to it. As water professionals, we become horribly isolated in what we do. We do not necessarily understand where our work takes us and how it connects with other industry professionals. Phycology or algae, cyanobacteria and algal blooms are one of those things. It's one of the main drivers of water quality issues. It's often seen as an end result, but they also drive a lot of the water quality issues that we observe. So the main thing is we need to start talking to each other as well as adults, because we're the ones currently, apart from the youth, and I would like to see the voting age lowered as well, because I think our youth are much more savvy about the environment than some of us are, even within the industry. But the other approach is, as scientists, we are horribly deficient in communicating with different levels of our society and our communities. We expect that people know what we are talking about, and they don't. We need to learn to communicate better. And we also need to reach out to our youth as a scientific community. It's one thing to be ignored by your government. It's another thing to be ignored by the people that have the most power to help you improve your future.
That's great. Thank you very much. Can we give all of our question askers a quick round of applause? So we've covered a wide range of issues, an entire agenda for multiple conferences. We've covered questions and issues arising from how we as humans modify our landscapes and the sometimes invisible consequences of doing so. We've covered the importance of cultivating care for place. We've started to look at youth and cross-generational involvement and leadership. We've also began to knock on the door of politics and to recognize that politics can be a powerful lever to use if we can engage politicians effectively. And we've finally come across the importance of communication and language, reaching out and making sure that you listen and are understood. So look, I'd like to thank you all for engaging, and I'd like to thank Ashley, Brad, and Justin for 3 terrific short talks and for helping us understand what we can learn from Australian waterways. We're now coming towards the closing reflections, and I'd like to ask Yasuo Takahashi-san to come to the stage to guide us through this final part of today.
Thank you very much. My name is Yasuo Takahashi. I'm the Vice President of ILEC. So it's my great pleasure and honor to make some final remarks on today's fruitful discussion. because of the time limitation and the capacity limit of my capacity, I'll be very short. So I think I'd like to focus 3 points to take away from this discussion. First, I think it is very important, critical for us to address the effect of climate change. Yeah, recently every day we feel the threat of climate change. In Tokyo, every day now more than temperature is more than 35 degrees. So we already feel the very extreme effect of climate change in our daily life. So I think it is very important for when we think about conservation of lakes, it is also very important. And also Professor Tanaka make a very good presentation that the scientific based modeling is very important for us to analyze the future effect of climate change to the lake environment. So that kind of scientific basis is very important. So anyway, the climate change is very, very critical for us. The second point is the importance of the integrated approach. Many people stress the importance of source to sea approach. It is very effective to improve the coordination among various sectors of the government. And also, I think it is also very important to mainstreaming the integrated approach in the international discussions. In particular, the discussion of the post-SDGs discussion, which will be maybe the international community will start intensively the discussion of the post-SDGs discussion. So it is very important for us to involve the integrated lake management discussion into the next phase discussion on post-SDGs. The third point is importance of the communication. We discussed many aspects of the communication. Communication among stakeholders, vast range of stakeholders, and communication among government sectors, and communication with local people, traditional knowledges, and also communication with young youth generation is also very important, and education. So this kind of communication is very important, critical for any process of policy planning and implementation. So this is my 3 points of the takeaway from today's discussion. So anyway, to conclude my remarks, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all the experts, panelists who took time out of their busy schedule to participate and contribute to today's international colloquium. I believe we can have a very good discussion to be a basis for the discussion from tomorrow in the 20th World Lake Conference. It is a memorial conference, I think, 20th conference, and also the first conference after the establishment of the World Lake Day. So it's a very critical, important conference. So I really appreciate I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to Professor David Hamilton of Griffith University and all the other people involved in the preparation of this important conference. And finally, I would like to conclude my closing summary by wishing the World Lake Conference a great success. Thank you very much.
Just to mention now that at 5 p.m. there is just outside in the foyer a networking event and that will be about 1.5 hours or so for people that want to stay till the end. And aside from that, look forward, hope you have a good evening, get some rest for those that have travelled, and we'll see you at 5 p.m.